Hello everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about how debt makes millionaires. This is not financial advice, this is just my opinion, my perspective on something like debt, and I'm not your financial advisor. You should always, consult the appropriate people before you make any sort of decisions like this. Debt makes a lot of people poor, but it also makes a lot of people millionaires. What's the difference? The difference is what you're borrowing against. Good versus bad debt. So if you're borrowing against productive assets like real estate or liquid assets like stocks, you're playing the same game that the wealthy play. That kind of debt builds wealth. But if you're borrowing to buy things that don't make money, like shoes or cars or whatever, or worse, to survive, that's not wealth building, that's just survival debt. And you're digging yourself a really, really deep hole by doing that. So what is a productive asset? A productive asset is something that puts money in your pocket, right? It either makes you income, like rent, or it goes up in value over time. Think of it like this. A car costs you money, a rental property makes you money. One is a liability and the other is a productive asset. It produces something to your benefit. Now, this is also where you can see it gets kind of nuanced, because a car could technically become a productive asset if you run some sort of car business or something like that, right? If you rent out luxury cars to people in Miami, so that they can rent it for a day and look like a baller, that then could become a productive asset. Why does debt actually create millionaires, right? It sounds kind of counterintuitive to think about borrowing money and that's how you become rich, right? But it's for one reason, and one very simple reason. Debt is tax-free. Here's the part that most people miss. When you borrow money, it's not income, which means it's not taxed. When somebody's lending you money, that's not money that you have or earned or owned. It's money that you owe to somebody. So it's not taxable income. If I sell a rental property or a stock, I owe taxes. But if I borrow against the property or borrow against the stock, I get the same cash in my hand tax-free because I owe it to somebody. That's how wealthy people fund new investments, big purchases, even their lifestyles, without triggering a tax bill or what's called a taxable event. Money is still changing hands though, so somebody's paying taxes, right? Yeah, the lender. But they only pay taxes on the interest that they earn from you, not the loan amount itself. So the system still gets a cut, but it's not from you, at least not up front. So let's, to make this a little easier to understand, let's say me, Matthew, I lend you $1 million, right? At a 10% interest. I wouldn't pay taxes on the $1 million that I get back from you. I would only pay taxes on the $100,000 in interest that I gained from you. Now, sure, you can borrow against pretty much anything. Take a Rolex to a pawn shop and they will lend you money, but the interest will be insane and the asset doesn't generate income. That's not wealth, that's just really expensive borrowing. I know that I talked about good debt and bad debt earlier in this video, but debt itself isn't good or bad. Debt is just debt. But if you understand it and use it to buy income producing or appreciating assets, it can be the most powerful wealth building tool in the world. So I hope this kind of clarified some debt questions that I got. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I got a comment on a previous video where I was talking about, how you can realistically become wealthy, and it's just to avoid debt at all costs, right? And somebody commented that, not all debt is bad. And they're right, not all debt is bad. But I would say if you cannot differentiate between understanding what a productive asset is or an asset that's extremely liquid so that lenders will allow you to borrow against it at low interest rate, if you don't understand those things, I would say avoid debt at all costs, because those are pretty important nuances and frames to view debt that are very important to how you realistically build wealth. And it's a slippery slope. If you're wrong, you can get yourself in a pretty deep hole. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I mean, this was just really a short video. And I briefly mentioned borrowing against liquid assets like stocks. These things are called margin loans. And that's how like ultra billionaires borrow against their wealth tax-free. And I can make a separate video on that if you guys want. But this stuff's pretty interesting. I find it really cool to learn about. And thanks so much for watching. And I'll talk to you later. See ya.